From Pee-wee to Dumbo and everything in between, join us every Thursday in April for Filmography Tim Burton. Our 5-part season will break down all 19 of Burton's feature-length films to date in detail. Follow Filmography on Spotify or wherever else you find your podcasts.
Consequence Podcast Network.
Hey, welcome to another edition of Kyle Meredith with. It's an audio interview series presented by WFPK Independent Louisville at WFPK.org, Consequence of Sound, and the Consequence Podcast Network. Before you get too deep into this interview, if you're not already a subscriber, I so hope you hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening from right now, whether that's with podcasts like iTunes and Apple Podcasts, or maybe you're finding us on YouTube or Spotify. You can follow along there as well. I'm Kyle Meredith. Today, my guest, my friend Katie Toupin. Katie's got her debut solo record called Magnetic Moves. This comes as her first release after leaving Houndmouth a few years ago. And we'll talk about what life was like after Houndmouth and the hurdles she had to get through, finding her own voice, and how that all pushes into this record with different sounds, the multiple sessions she went through, and the importance of Los Angeles in her current story. She's also a self-proclaimed hopeless romantic, and that definitely finds its way into the lyrics of this record. And we get an update on a project that she's just recently a part of called the Pine Mountain Sessions with Daniel Martin Moore. Talking about the album Magnetic Moves, it's Kyle Meredith with Katie Toupin.
Hello.
Let me give you the compliments. Magnetic Moves, I got to listen to it, and this is way better than I even thought it would be, that I even hoped it would be. You've done it. You've done a great record. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, for all the listeners who don't know, of course, you were in Houndmouth for the last few years, and you dropped out of that band in, what was that, 2016?
3 years ago.
3 years ago, okay. And since then, you've left our Louisville area here for the big old city of Los Angeles, and that seems to be a big part of the story. How important has LA been for you in this rebirth?
I think it's been really important. Louisville had become comfortable, and I think that starting something new, I needed to struggle a little bit, and I know that's so tortured sounding, but I needed that sort of space of absolutely nobody in LA knows who I am or anything I've done, and so that part of the struggle, I think, was a really important part of the creative process.
This whole album has been sort of a start-stop thing too, right? I mean, getting out there wasn't just the first part of the puzzle. Like there are, I guess, several versions of this record that happened beforehand.
Yeah, so I've been recording since I left Houndmouth. It's been just such a process because, it's a finding my own sound and finding my own footing outside, having a normal life outside of just being on the road all the time. There's been a lot of pieces to it. And so, I put out Moroccan Ballroom, which was a live EP that I recorded in LA, which was a really nice sort of dipping the toes back into the world of making music for other people. But, I kept looking for a producer, and I would try out different people and try different songs, different people, and write all these songs, and nothing was really landing. I got real close to finding a producer, and then the timing didn't work out, and I did this house show tour where bands would host me, and this was last fall. And on the house show tour, I was in Austin, and I had a day off. And I said, I just want to go record a song. And I asked a friend where to go. And he pointed me in the direction of a place called the Finishing School, which is owned by the band of Heathens guys. And I went in, and there's this guy, Scott Davis, who played almost all the instruments on the record, and Josh Blue, who played all the percussion. And we just knocked out a song called The Hills Are Calling, which is on the album, really quickly and painlessly, and it just had such a vibe, and I knew that I had to make my record there. So it was, and then I was just going to produce it myself. And it just took a long time to figure that out and find the right fit.
So once you get to that point, as you mentioned, finding your own voice, finding your own sound, when did that start finally taking shape, and what exactly did that mean? What was that for you?
I think it took like writing a lot of songs and a lot of time of just like finding my own self, because my identity had really been wrapped up in that band and Houndmouth for my entire adult life. So I didn't really know who I was, and so or what I liked outside of that. And so I really wanted the album to be sort of direct and sort of vulnerable, and it was a very painful process of trial and error and sort of letting go of what anyone else thinks I should be or all of that. There was sort of an added pressure, I think, from being in Houndmouth to please everyone, and you just can't, you just can't do that, and so I just took a lot of trial and error. And then the batch of songs I was really, really happy with for Magnetic Moves. They're all sort of real and vulnerable and kind of direct, they're not sort of super masked in metaphor, overly masked in imagery and other things that I was sort of used to hiding behind.
It's not what I would say, I guess, a romance record, but it is. I mean, it's not a heartbreak record, but it is.
It kind of is. Yeah, it is. I mean, there's definitely a breakup involved in this record, a romantic aspect, and I am, I'm a romantic person. I'm sensitive, and I think that being able to be vulnerable in that way is a strength, and I wanted to make a record that was vulnerable and real and showed that it's good to love, and it's, even though it's painful, it's important, and all of that. I think that's maybe the most important part of life is to love.
I mean, you get that in the titles. There's one called Real Love. I mean, and it's kind of splashed all over the record, even if you're only looking at the track list there, which, by the way, I'll bring up Real Love real quick, and the history of the spoken bridge, which you have now added on to. You're definitely hitting a mood with that one there.
Yeah, so that's probably my favorite song on the record. And the bridge was actually sung, and then I went and recorded a harmony that was sort of spoken behind it, and I said, oh, the harmony is way cooler. And it sort of has that like old Dolly Parton or something vibe to it that I really like. I feel like the young kids are going to be like, oh, it's like Lana Del Rey. But it's I wasn't really going for that. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I'm going to do more of that.
There are some sounds on here that actually surprised me, because when you get to In Your Dreams, I thought, is that Dixieland I'm hearing? Is that some 70s country?
Yeah. I mean, I hear like a Beatlesy, jangly sort of vibe in that one. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, I guess while I'm on the on the songs here, I Need You is really great. It's one of my favorites on here. What I find interesting, though, is when you go down, there's a bonus track that says, I'm going to let you go. And I thought, I don't know if you sequence it that way, but there's a story told, I guess, the whole thing. I mean, you've already mentioned there is a breakup. Does the record kind of tell that entire story? Is that what this is?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely touches on all the different pieces of that. And it was writing it sort of throughout the phase of the demise of this relationship that I was involved in. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
As much as you want to go into it.
Yeah.
It does, if that's the period.
It's not necessarily like linear or something. The record's not like linear about it. It just sort of touches on different perspectives. Each song sort of, I think, touches on a little different perspective of, relationship.
With the title track getting, being the first single, Magnetic Moves, what does that phrase mean?
It's it's the magnetism between two people, and then in a more broader way, it's your magnetism. What you attract, and I just thought that the phrase was so compelling.
There's a quote, I think, in the press release. You say, using your magnetism to create the world you want to live in. Which, this phrase goes far beyond relationship status right here. This is something much bigger.
Yeah, I mean, I felt, the last 3 years I've done so much work on myself and so much, diving really deep in some spirituality and some other sort of things, holistic sort of aspects of things, and manifesting a world that I want to live in and creating that, because I think for a long time I was sort of at the mercy of my surroundings and decisions that I had made, in my early 20s or even teens, and I had to come up with a whole new formula and a whole new way of going about that. And if you follow me on Instagram, I talk about lots of stuff, regarding that sort of thing. But yeah, what you think about, you bring about, and it goes with the type of people that you attract, and ultimately your entire world. So you can dumb it down a little bit to make it apply to a relationship, but it is a much broader topic.
And that time in between, I mean, it does seem so transformative. And, I would have to ask, what were the days right after you left the band like for you? Because, I don't know, was that freedom, or was that scary, or all of the above? I mean, what was life like at that point, taking that leap?
It wasn't joyous by any means. I can't go too much into it, but it wasn't great. So, and definitely there was a lot of fear around it, and a lot of, because it wasn't just leaving a band, it was leaving my identity, like that's who I was. I mean, that's the only person that I really knew that I was, or had been, my entire adult life. I started playing music with Matt when I was 18, and then was with Houndmouth until I was 26 when I left. And so there was nothing else, and so it was a really scary time and a really raw time, and I was really lost. And so there just had to be, it was like forced growth, it's not fun.
Well, I mean, it really did lead to all the right spots, for whatever you had to suffer. The art does turn out. I mean, it's not for nothing, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Because
well, I hope not.
Well, let me say this.
I hope not.
Let me say this, because I was privy to hear some early versions of this. I think I heard some of the first demos of this that you allowed me some years back, and I remember thinking like, "Oh, this is good." And just thinking at that point, it's a good starting direction, and I guess I'm glad that you didn't release it in that version, because whatever that became, this is worlds ahead of that. I love listening to this record.
Yeah, I think that being patient and knowing when it's right to release it, I mean, that was really important, because there was a lot of recordings. Like Magnetic Moves alone, I think that song I have 5 fully produced versions of before I came to this version. It just takes some time. And I think, young, more unexperienced artists maybe get excited and want to release the first thing that comes to mind. And that's just, it's just not wise. And ultimately, the music is for me, like I make music because I need to express something and I need to say something. And then, releasing it into the world is a whole different thing. It needs to be, it's got to be, the quality of it has to be right, and that's hard to define, but you just know it when it's there. And, when I made this record, when I did this set of recordings, I said, oh, I think this is the moment, this is it. But yeah, thanks for at least seeing the potential, Kyle.
Hey, I wanted to ask about a little side note here, too, because I got an email from Daniel Martin Moore putting out the Pine Mountain Sessions, and you're a part of that compilation as well.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I recorded like a sort of folky song with Daniel at his house, and he was starting that project, and it's called Lover Tonight, my song that I put on that. And it was so funny because he was like, he sent me this thing last week and was like, hey, I'm releasing this thing. And I was like, did I write a song for that? I was like, are you sure that I'm a part of that? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, yeah. I was like, oh, good, because I want to be a part of that. Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah,
it was a really special song that's on it. And I was actually sort of saving that song for, I don't know, for something special down the line. So I'm actually really happy that it's released.
Yeah.
It's going to be released.
Something special right there it is. And you didn't even have to try.
It's every time I don't try, it's all fine.
There's the pull quote right there, right? That's it.
Yeah, just stop trying. Just be yourself, and it's all good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you do try. Just the same. Compliments to Magnetic Moves. When's it out? When's the release date?
It's June 14th.
Awesome. All right, Katie, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for doing this.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Kyle. I appreciate it. I'll see you in June.
All right. See you then.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
All right.
Talk to you
Bye.
soon.
Always a big thanks to Katie Toupin. The debut solo album is called Magnetic Moves. And before you get out of here, if you haven't already, I so hope you hit that subscribe button so you can follow along with all of the interviews we put out every single week. iTunes, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts from. You can also subscribe at YouTube and Spotify. After that, WFPK.org. That's where you'll find me every Monday through Thursday from noon to 3 Eastern doing a show. ConsequenceOfSound.net has your music and film news. You can find me at Twitter at Kyle Meredith and Facebook/Kyle Meredith. Does it for another edition. I'm Kyle Meredith. I'll see you next time.
Consequence Podcast Network.